Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to week 4 of us all working from home full time. And as you know, one of the reasons we're hosting these virtual leader chats is so we can stay connected and engaged, and it helps during times of uncertainty and worry. I'm sure most of you saw the eye-opening statistics on this virus from the Ontario government on Friday. It's hard to not let that worry us, which is what has inspired today's session, worry. Denise Marek is here to talk to us about strategies to reduce worry, anxiety, and put an end to the what-if thinking. Denise is internationally known as the worry management expert. She has empowered people, corporations around the world to reconnect with their inner peace, overcome their fears, and take risks that are essential for personal and professional success. So thank you, Denise, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Friday, as I mentioned, Public Health Ontario revealed some very concerning projection numbers for the province. Officials say existing steps must stay in place to halt the spread of this pandemic, and they also called for stronger action. And I want to reiterate that the health, safety, and wellness of our employees is our top priority. We need to keep the business operating, and we need to do our part as MPAC employees and as citizens to help slow the spread of the virus. Us doing our part means we take these warnings very seriously. So thank you to everyone for listening to the advice of staying home and keeping your distance. I'd also like to share that tomorrow, April 7th, is World Health Day. And the theme this year is to celebrate the work of nurses and midwives and remind world leaders of the critical role that they play in keeping the world healthy. Nurses and other healthcare workers are at the forefront of the COVID-19 response, providing high quality, respectful treatment and care. Without nurses and healthcare workers, there would be no response. So I'm so appreciative of all the essential workers, healthcare workers, and the people who go to work each and every day to keep us safe. Another update is our business continuity team continues to meet on a daily basis, share the feedback, and make decisions. And we're always updating our dedicated COVID-19 page on the intranet. We also post FAQs, so frequently asked questions of yourselves, as well as those that were addressed on the Ask Us Anything EMG session are posted on the COVID-19 page. So please check those out. And now for today's virtual leader chat. As usual, we've got Carla on the line, and she will take your questions on the chat function. So Carla, do you want to pop in and say good afternoon to everybody?
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. So please use the chat function and Carla will ask the questions. So Denise, this is really timely because over the weekend and even today on breakfast television, anxiety and worry are at all-time highs for us. And you shared this analogy with me of us being in a storm. Can you share a little bit about that analogy and how we can deal with this worry and anxiety?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're in the middle of a storm, the likes of which most of us have never ever seen before. And we can actually call it the perfect storm in that it's impacting every area of life in every part of the world right now. And it's important to understand that right now there's a grieving process that's happening. We're grieving the freedom and the peace that we had before this all started. And we also then watch the news. So we'll see the new number of cases, we'll see the new directives by the government, and sometimes we'll wonder how long is this thing going to last, and it scares us and it puts us on edge. And there's a sense of loss that is coming with this. And then there's also something that's called anticipatory grief. And anticipatory grief is when you're anticipating, once again, how bad is this thing going to get? How long is this going to last? Am I going to lose more in the future? Now, I am a very optimistic person. I, much like you, Nicole, lean more towards the optimistic side of the scale. And I firmly believe that there is a seed of opportunity in every adversity. However, I'm also human. And so when we're talking about this grieving process, sometimes sadness, even for me, will creep in. So for instance, this weekend, it really hit me. I thought, wow, my first daughter is expecting my first grandson on July the 15th. And I thought, wow, July 15th, there might be a possibility that I am not able to hold my first grandchild. And it made me sad. So Nicole, what are your thoughts on that? Have you been seeing people who are feeling that sense of loss? Have you experienced it yourself?
Well, it's funny, as you were sharing that, I wonder if we've shifted a little, because I would tell you 2 weeks ago, I felt and saw more of the grief of, oh, you can't go out for dinner anymore. You can't be with your friends and family. You can't do all these things. And now it's switched more to, well, how long is this going to last. The Ontario government just closed all events until June 30th. So July has now become our goal date. So I feel the shift now is a little bit more about how long it will last. And for me personally, I've settled in a little bit more, as much as you can, into my new normal. I'm not sure if you're seeing similar shifts on that scale.
Well, you know, I really love what you had said in that 2 weeks ago it was different, and now you're feeling a little more settled. And what's important to understand is that might change tomorrow, where you feel that sadness creep in, and then the next day you'll feel even more settled. And the important thing as we're going through this pandemic is to validate your feelings. And when you're feeling sad, when you're feeling stressed, validate that and say, of course I'm feeling this way. I mean, this is new. This is uncharted territory. So validate your feelings. And then it's really important to embrace the present. In fact, I'm going to suggest that people who are watching right now, if you have a piece of paper, write it in big letters, embrace the present, and tape that on your wall. So that's going to be one of the themes that we talk about as we go through our conversation today. So let's embrace the present right now. If you'll just do one thing with me, even Nicole, if you'll just play along, let's all just take a deep breath in and exhale. Okay, so sometimes when we're stressed, we forget to breathe. We hold our breath, we take very shallow breaths, and what that does is it cuts off the oxygen to our brain, and we need all the thinking capacity we can have in this time. So take those deep breaths and ground yourself in the present. One of the ways to do that, as well as the breathing, is to implement what is thinking. So what that means is oftentimes when we're worrying, we think, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if this lasts forever? Sometimes we catastrophize. And then we have to bring it back into the present and say, okay, what is happening right now? So if you think about it, Nicole, what's happening right now? I'm here, you're there, we're talking, we're giving strategies, and you know what? We're gonna laugh today. So right now,
it's all about laughter. And you know what's funny, Denise, is you say, like, we're always, we get so fixated on the worry part. I find, again, maybe it's this optimist hat, that when there's no news or some good news, like, I grab it and I think, what a great day. There was no significant event. It seemed a little bit of normal. I worked on some business things that were normal as opposed to a crisis mode. So I gravitate to those and try and focus on those as best as I can.
And that is the very best attitude to have. But what do we do when we don't have that natural optimism? Because let's face it, some people don't have that natural optimism. So why don't we talk about that 4-step process to help people calm their mind? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you have CALM actually stands for something in your world. So you're not only a CALM expert, you've actually created an acronym. And at MPAC, we love acronyms. So there you go. We'll add it to our
Okay, so you're gonna love this one, because when you're worrying, you can remind yourself to calm and follow each of the 4 steps that we'll be talking about today. So the first step that we'll get into is the C, and it stands for challenge your assumptions. And the reason we need to continually challenge our assumptions is they're often wrong. To show you what I mean, I'm going to play a game with you, Nicole. If you're up for a game, I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and all you have to do is answer these questions fast. You ready for this game?
All right, let's do it.
What color is this paper?
White.
What do cows drink?
Milk. That's wrong. Water.
Drink water. Okay, I'll ask you one more. But it's great. It's so much more fun when people get them wrong anyway. So again, just do it fast. Spell shop. Okay, right. Spell shop.
S-H-O-P.
What do you do when you come to a green light?
Go.
Ah, you got it. See, there you go. But weren't you so surprised when you got the first one incorrect? Because so for everyone else watching, thank you, by the way, for getting it incorrect. If you got both right, it doesn't drive home the point as well. So the point is that we all know that Nicole is incredibly brilliant. And the reality is, no matter how smart, capable, or competent you are, your mind can be tricked. It can make mistakes. So we really need, especially in this time, to be on the lookout for the mental mistakes that we're making so that we can catch them and correct them before they cause us to worry. And I'll tell you, I learned the value of challenging my assumptions very early on in my working life. My first part-time job when I was 17 was pumping gas at a gas station in Toronto. And it was a Gulf gas station. That's how long ago it was. And I remember this one day, this guy drives into the gas station and he had this beautiful red sports car. And I gave him the works. I did everything my boss had trained me to do. I cleaned his windshield, I checked his oil, I filled his car up with gas. And then when I came back with his change, I had a smile on my face and a bounce in my 17-year-old step. I said, have a great weekend. And then this guy drives off, taking the entire gas pump with him. I forgot to take the nozzle out. So apparently that's happened so often since I was 17. They've devised it so if you don't take the nozzle out, it will just pop off the hose. But when I was 17, it was on good and tight. So what happened was the whole gas pump came crashing down and there was glass everywhere. And my boss saw what had happened from where he was sitting in his office, and he came running out and yelled, Denise, go home. But I didn't go home. I was too embarrassed. So instead, I wandered around the streets of Toronto trying to figure out how I was going to tell my friends and family I'd just been fired from my first job. Of course, later I did go home, and that night my boss called. We're on the phone, and he said, Denise, you're not fired. He said, I was just really mad, and I didn't want to say something I was going to regret. Well, there's some things you can learn from that story. First of all, if you ever worry about making a mistake, always remember, I practically destroyed an entire gas station and didn't even lose my job, which shows the outcome of our mistakes is rarely as bad as we imagine it's going to be. And secondly, I was walking around the streets of Toronto, all knotted up inside, worried, stressed, too embarrassed to go home, all based on my assumption that I'd been fired. So it was a pretty good assumption, but it was wrong, and it caused me to worry unnecessarily. And that's what negative assumptions do. Negative assumptions create unnecessary worry. So Nicole, what kind of assumptions have you been seeing that can lead to people's worries right now?
Yeah, and I'll share you some of them from our staff, but I often wonder, our brains are almost wired to go negative before they go positive. So you could see in those moments. So even when you tell me, answer really fast already, my anxiety's up because you think you don't want to get it wrong. And the good news is on your story is they've now fixed how they do the gas cans, it sounds like. So now they don't get stuck anymore. So they should actually be thanking you for that, for that innovation. I think when I look at our staff and the conversations that I'm having, it's because we live in this up and down uncertainty world. We don't know how long it's going to be. People are feeling, their home life is different. They could have a spouse and children at home at the same time. You're trying to balance your workspaces. They may not feel as productive as they normally would feel. And so I think those are the assumptions of like, oh no, I'm not working as much. I'm not working as hard, or I'm not sure what's going to happen next. I'm not sure, how long this is going to go. And I think that's an up and down for all of us. And we just keep trying to reiterate to our staff, we know these are extraordinary times. We're doing everything we can. And I can tell you that our productivity is at near high levels. So it's showing in the numbers. We have record growth for this time of the year. We're doing so much more virtually than I think we ever even anticipated that we could do. And the best part is people are coming up with ideas to do their job better than they may not have thought of before because they weren't forced into it. So, but I think the negative always starts with that assumption of, oh, it's not how I did it before, I'm doing something wrong. But then I think people are also feeling that gratitude when they see that they're actually changing something for the better.
That is brilliant. And you just reminded me of a really important strategy to add on. So when they're assuming or they're worrying, what if I'm not being as productive or I'm doing that whole full workday? You're just saying, here are the facts. We're at an all-time high of productivity. So what I'm going to suggest is, for those of you who are watching, when you have those worries, you're making those assumptions, write it all down. When you can see your thoughts on paper, it changes things. In your mind, worry seems so big. Write it down on paper and then ask yourself, is this thought a fact or an opinion? And it's really easy to differentiate. I learned how to differentiate between fact and opinion years ago. I was actually helping my daughter Brianna with a grade 3 homework assignment, and it was actually on facts and opinions. So the homework assignment was a page of around 20 statements, and Brianna's job was to read each statement, and then beside it there was the word fact and there was the word opinion, and she was to circle which one the statement was. So here are a couple of the statements. Some families have dogs as pets. Brianna answered, fact. Dogs are better pets than cats. Brianna answered, opinion. Apples grow on trees. Brianna answered, fact. A banana tastes disgusting. Brianna answered, facts. I noticed she's in grade 3. I noticed she made a mistake.
Not a banana person.
I noticed she'd made a mistake, and I said, Brianna, you said it's a fact that a banana tastes disgusting, but I ate a banana for breakfast today, so is it a fact or an opinion? And she looked at me very seriously and said, it's a fact that you ate a disgusting banana for breakfast today. Many of the thoughts we have right now are opinion, even on the news. I mean, we were talking just before we were on the show together right now, and you were saying you get in and you watch the news 3 times a day and then you get out. This is so important because get the facts and then get out of the news. And the reality is all the things in between are usually people commenting and putting in their opinions about what the actual facts are. You don't need to watch people's opinions about what the facts are. You get the facts and then get out. So it's important to challenge your assumptions on a regular basis.
And there's no time more than ever that we need to just look at facts, because you're just inundated with opinions and worry, and then it just spirals from there. So get the facts, get out. I like that.
And then what do you do? So that's just the first step. You challenge your assumptions. And then once you've done that, you move on to the second step, which is the A, and it stands for act to control the controllable. Because not all of the stresses and worries that you have right now are necessarily bad. Sometimes our worry is prompting us to take action. So what you'll want to do is, again, write it down. I'm a big believer in, if you're stressing out, you've got to get it out in the open where you can see it. So write your worries down and then say, what possible actions is this prompting me to take? So for instance, if you're worried about finances, I mean, that's a big one. I was on the morning show today and I was doing the parenting playbook segment, helping parents to alleviate the stress they have around COVID-19. And one of the moms wrote into me and she said that because they're both laid off, she said, I am afraid of whether I should be paying my mortgage or paying for food. I mean, this is real. These are things that keep you up at night. And so even in that case, now, can she control what's happening in the world? Can she control the pandemic? Absolutely not. But in her financial situation, there might be things she can do to control the controllable. So she might be able to talk to her mortgage lender and say, so listen, are you doing mortgage deferrals? Is there any way that I can refinance to get more money out of my mortgage to help me with my cash flow? So even in your own situations, sometimes there are actions that you can take. So for instance, I think I wrote this down because Nicole, Jamie said this to me. She said that some of the employees had mentioned expressing their worry getting sick, and then how will they be able to take care of their family or children? So that's a valid concern. So you might think, well, can you control whether you get sick? Well, there are some actions you can take. You can follow the protocols of staying in right now, doing the respiratory health. But what happens on the off chance that you do happen to get this, or you're working with somebody who's on the front lines and they get sick? Well, if you're worried about it happening, you can't control what's going to happen tomorrow, but there's still solutions that will give you some peace today. So ask yourself, what specifically am I worried about if this happens? So you could say, well, I'm worried, nobody will be able to help with my children. If that's the case, could you find a backup plan? Could you find somebody that you were able to say, listen, if I were to become ill, would you be able to take my children for me? So that, because you'd be in isolation, unable to take care of your family. Maybe on weekends you could do batch cooking so that if you're not feeling well, you have all of this food that's easy to prepare. So sometimes we just need to take a look and control the things we can control. I will say though that when we're in a heightened state of anxiety, our thinking can become impaired and fuzzy. So in that moment when you're thinking of that worry and you're really stressed, you might not be able to see any opportunity or any possibility because it's your situation. And if that's the case, I recommend don't brainstorm alone. Hop on the phone, get on Skype with friends and say, listen, here's what I'm concerned about. Can you help me brainstorm possible solutions?
And I think that's so key, because what I'm hearing in your messaging is A, write it down, because you may need to actually step away from it because you're already putting your own opinions on top of it. And secondly, and this is something we've been saying for the longest time, doing your part means asking for help. And those of you who can help, stepping up and helping. So it could be asking a coworker, it could be your manager, it could be your family, it could be your neighbor, but everyone is trying to do their part. And I see so many inspiring stories of people helping, and this is the time. So all those suggestions you just gave, bulk cooking, talking to your mortgage broker, don't feel alone. Write them down, try not to have your opinion on them, and then ask for help and ask for support. And that's what we're trying to do here at Impact for all of our employees. We know we're not going to have the answers to everything, and we know that some people will be in that situation where someone in their family may need to self-isolate, and then childcare becomes even more challenging. And so we encourage all of you, speak to your manager, speak to your coworker. If you have extra capacity and extra time, put your hand up and help someone. And if you need help, please make sure that you ask for it.
I love that. What you just said is so important. Ask for help. We are all in this together, and we need to reach out because people want to extend kindness to other people. And if you ask for help, that gives them the opportunity to help. And
Absolutely.
even if you think my situation is hopeless, I'm not going to ask for help because there are no solutions. Don't buy into that. You know what? That again is just an assumption. Don't buy into it. I'll tell you a story about a doctor named Dr. Jerry Nielsen. Do you remember Dr. Nielsen, Nicole?
I do not, no.
It might start to ring a bell. She was the physician that did her own breast cancer surgery at the South Pole.
Oh my goodness, that does ring a little bit of a bell, but yeah, share the story.
There's a movie about her in a book, and a number of years ago, I was speaking for Toyota in Kentucky, and between the first and second day, she and I and some of the other speakers went out for dinner together. So she was sharing with us some of her experiences of being a physician at the South Pole. Going to the South Pole does not have the same appeal as going south for the winter. And so
No.
medical health is very limited. In fact, when she agreed to be the doctor, it meant she was agreeing to be the doctor for the full year because there's only a small window of opportunity where the weather is okay, so a plane can land to drop you off.
Wow, to get in and get out, yeah.
Get in and get out, just like the news. And so then a year later, they can pick you up. So you have to say that you'll do it for a full year. And not only that, she was the only doctor there, the only nurse, and the dentist. Before flying to the pole, she was given a 4-hour training course in dentistry. And she said the first time she had to drill into a woman's tooth, she was terrified. She said to the lady, "Are you afraid of dentists?" And the woman said, "Yes, I am." And Dr. Nielsen said, "Don't worry, I'm not one." So she doesn't have a lot of experience in dentistry, but when it comes to overcoming obstacles, she sure does. Because as I was saying, what happened was when they dropped her off, she felt a lump in her right breast. And she thought, I've got breast cancer. And she made an assumption. She thought, I'm going to die. And so at that point, she decided not to ask for help. And this is where this is all coming in, the conversation and the advice you had just given, Nicole. She thought, there isn't anything anyone can do for me. I am the only doctor here. So she made another assumption that there was nothing that could be done. And she made an assumption that nobody could handle it. So she decided not to tell anyone what she was going through. And she kept the secret to herself until she was so sick she couldn't work anymore. And that's when she had to tell them what was happening. And just as she was expected, she was right about one thing. There was no way that a plane could land in those weather conditions to rescue her. But something was able to happen that she hadn't even thought of, and only because other people were giving input. So what was able to happen, this is so cool, the Air Force was able to fly overhead and drop the medical supplies she needed to treat herself. She taught a mechanic how to administer her IV by timing the drips on his watch. And she taught a welder how to operate on her breast using a frozen piece of chicken for practice. And she gave herself chemotherapy and she survived.
Wow,
so there is
amazing.
something that even in the worst of situations, there is still possibility of a positive outcome. Don't go through it alone. Talk to someone else. Tell them how you're feeling. Tell them you need help with your brainstorming. Tell them you need help with anything you need help with. It's so important.
Yeah, and don't wait that long. I mean, I'm sure what happened is she came to that conclusion early and she kept it until she was forced that now she's actually ill and she needs to do something about it. And therefore she spoke about it. So that's why I think your suggestion of writing it down, because then you can come back with a little bit of a clearer head and look at it and then really strategize about what options do you have. So that's great. So we've done the C, we've done the A, and now what's the L now in CALM?
Well, once you've challenged your assumptions and once you've taken all the actions you can to control the controllable, now you've got to move on to the L, and it stands for let go of the uncontrollable. And there are several.
Says let go. It's the hardest thing to let go.
It's the hardest thing to let go. So I'm going to talk about two different kinds of letting go. One, I'm going to give you some physical things that you can do to help your body cope with stress. And one thing I want to really, really talk about is how to let go of the guilt that we might be feeling right now. So you had mentioned that some people feel guilty that they might not be putting in a full day, even though they're more productive in the hours that they do work. Or some people I know feel guilty because they're working and they have to close the door and they think, oh no, I'm working, but my kids want me. And then it's just inside all discombobulated with guilt. So in those moments where you're feeling guilty, there's two questions that you can ask yourself to reconnect with your inner peace. First, ask yourself, is what I'm doing appropriate in this situation? The second question to ask yourself is, am I doing the best I can? And if you can answer yes to those two questions, if you feel like you're doing the best you can, and if what you're doing is appropriate in this situation, give yourself some credit. I mean, what we're going through can be challenging, and you are doing it. So drop the guilt, reconnect with your inner peace. Does that make sense to you, Nicole?
Oh, it makes total sense, because you shared that with me when we did our prep call on Friday. And I said, you know what? I needed to hear that, because one of the opposite sides of my optimism is I look at this and it's horrible. It's a pandemic. People are sick. People are dying. We're running out of PPE. There's so many horrible things with it. But there's also a lot of good. We're seeing a new side of humanity. We're seeing people come together. People are spending more time with their family. And just purely from an empath work standpoint, we're reinventing empath and finding newer and greater ways. And I find myself gravitating towards those positive ways. And then I felt guilty about it. And I don't know if guilt was the right word, but I felt guilty. And then you challenged me with those two questions. And then I thought, no, like I am doing the best that I can in this scenario. So I was able to answer those two questions and really remove some of that guilt personally.
That is fantastic, because guilt never serves us. I mean, even if you answered and said, I don't think I'm doing the best I can, should you feel guilty then? No, because guilt never serves you. Instead, say, okay, so I've just become aware of something. That's great. That's a positive. So now how can what strategies can I take to do better? Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about L. More let go strategies. So I have so many strategies in my book, and I'm going to talk about some of these strategies. But Nicole, you had mentioned that you wanted me to share a story about somebody who wasn't doing so well that read Calm, and then they had a complete change. So I'll share that now. And I was telling Nicole that I had an email one day, and I was, you open your emails in the morning, and the title said, you probably get this all the time. So I thought, then it said ... Your book literally saved my life. So of course I opened that one first. And this lady from England had written an email to me, and she said that she had been suicidal. So a friend of hers she said, come around to visit, and she brought her a copy of the book Calm, and she said, okay, don't leave your room until you've read the first chapter of this book. And the lady said, I'm never leaving my room, and there's no way a book can help me. Just put it on the shelf. And she said her friend put it on the shelf, then she left. And she said as she was in her bed, something inside her kept saying, read the book, read the book, read the book. And so she picked it up. She said, I read the first chapter, the second chapter, third chapter. She said, I read the whole book that day, which was amazing because I haven't read a book since I graduated school. And she said, and then a miracle happened. I made my way down the stairs for the first time in 4 weeks. And I ate my first real meal in 4 weeks. And she said, now another miracle's happened. I'm going back to work. It's 6 months later. And she said, I'm taking your book with me. And I want you to know if it wasn't for what you wrote, I wouldn't be here today. So thank you. I mean, those kind of messages are, whew. And
very powerful.
In hearing good stories like this, in hearing acts of kindness, in giving acts of kindness, and in receiving acts of kindness. So if you all felt good while listening to that story, that's because when you hear these things or extend the kindness yourself, your brain produces serotonin. And serotonin is that feel-good feeling that makes you feel peaceful, euphoric, and blissful. So you get that serotonin boost when you're doing an act of kindness, or even when you're hearing about kindness or hearing a positive story. So that's another way to help you let go. Focus on the positive stories. So
absolutely.
Let me talk about some of the strategies to let go. There's so many different ones. Here's a quick one. And Nicole, if you could just do this with me, because I want everyone to do it, but I can't see them. Just relax your jaw for a moment. Just relax your jaw. What did you notice happen? What followed suit in your body?
The quiet.
There was
everything just went quiet.
Yes, there was a quiet, and when I do it at home, I notice, and maybe the people who have done it at home, your shoulders kind of relax. When you relax your jaw, your entire body sort of follows suit. There's actually been studies that show when you relax your jaw for 15 minutes a day, so when you concentrate on relaxing your jaw, it actually reduces physical pain. So they did this study with people who had undergone similar surgical procedures. And so those who did the jaw relaxation exercise had a reduction in the need for painkillers after only 3 days. So it goes a long way. So it can help you with your mental stress too. And then there's all sorts of things that we can do. We talked about already extending kindness to others and how that helps. And there's another interesting strategy. When you're really stressed or worried, rock or sway back and forth. Because if you think about it, it actually stops the fight, flight, or freeze response from getting set off. What do mothers instinctively do when their baby's crying?
They rock the baby.
Rock
Yeah.
the baby. And so it's, let's say you have to make a phone call and you're feeling stressed. You could be on the other end and just be standing up and sort of swaying from side to side. It calms you right down. So
For
they're really
pacing, right? You've got the phone, you can pace with the phone. That's another thing a lot of people do.
absolutely. So it's that movement in general. If you're working and the stress load's coming up, if you think you don't have time to get outside and have a 5-minute break, if you can walk and still maintain the social distancing in the area where you are, it's so important, because when you feel the sun on your skin, or even on a cloudy, windy day, you feel that breeze through your hair, it actually causes your brain to release neurotransmitters that boost your mood. So you'll actually start to feel better and more optimistic just by being in nature. So it is important. People say I don't have time to step outside. You don't have time not to. We've got to move our body. In the next step, we're going to be talking about strategies to master your mindset, but something about exercise and nutrition, it's very difficult to change your mindset when your nutrition is out of whack and you're not moving. Nicole, are you doing a lot of exercise these days?
I am. You know what? Like we talked at the beginning about settling into routine. So we're in week 4, and I'm probably the most settled into my routine. I used to go to the gym in the morning. I can't do that anymore. So I've created a home workout that I do in the mornings. I watch the sunrise from my window. I play music in the background. I have very little equipment, but somehow I can make 30, 40 minutes go by. And then on the other days, usually the opposite days, I'll go for a run or walk. And so in some ways, I'm actually liking my new routine better than my last one. So I get to sleep in an extra hour because I don't have all of the go to the gym, get dressed, do all these different kind of things, commute into work. Now it's a little bit tighter, but I'm enjoying it. Actually, it's going quite well.
So I love the optimism, and it just ties in so beautifully with the 4th step of the comp process. So let's just jump right on in there. And that is to master your mind. And this is where you learn to guard against negative thinking, and you begin to talk to yourself constructively instead of destructively. So we know we talk to ourselves on a regular basis. It's most commonly referred to as self-talk. And there are 2 extremes of self-talk, and I'm going to describe these 2 extremes. And then for those of you watching, just ask yourself which extreme most closely resembles the way you talk to yourself. So on one extreme, you'll find people with a very nurturing self-talk. So people who are very nurturing in their inner dialogue, they usually focus on their strengths. They usually find opportunity in the storm. If they make a mistake, they think, that's okay, I'll do better next time. And then on the far extreme, you'll find more of an abusive self-talk. So if you have an abusive self-talk, you probably notice you're very hard on yourself. You focus in on all of your perceived flaws and imperfections. And notice I stress the word perceived, because that's just an opinion. Your flaws are an opinion. And if you were to make a mistake, you might say something like, what is wrong with me? Why do I always make mistakes? So maybe you can see yourself on one of those 2 extremes, or maybe you fall kind of balanced in the middle. But I do want to give you an example before we move on about a very nurturing self-talk. I was attending a seminar one day, and my friend, who is a speaker as well, she was giving this seminar, and when she was finished, I came up to talk with her. And while we're in the middle of our conversation, this man who had been in the audience, he was a seminar participant, he came on over and then asked her if she was pregnant. So she let him know that she was not. And after he walked away, she had this look of disbelief on her face, and she said, that is the strangest pickup line I have ever heard. So that's positive thinking. Nicole, I don't know about you, but I definitely would not have thought I was being hit on in that situation.
That is too funny.
Well,
Good for her for doing that.
I'm going to have to stop eating. So, but obviously the way you talk to yourself plays a crucial role in learning to transform worry into inner peace, because it's that inner dialogue, again, that largely dictates whether you feel worried or calm. So what can you do? I mean, we can all fall to that negative side of the scale from time to time. Even me, I've been teaching people how to stop worrying for 20 years, and even I can slide down to that end from time to time. The first step is awareness, okay? So you become aware, I'm thinking these negative thoughts again, or I'm ruminating, this is happening, and then you become aware of it, and then you choose to pull yourself out. You choose to replace that negative thought with a truthful but more realistic thought. So I'll give you an example of what I mean. Let's say you hear on the news that the pandemic is going to go on, and we have to practice social distancing for a certain length of more time, and you're thinking, I can't handle this. I'm stuck in my house. I miss my family. I can't take it. Okay, that's when you need to catch yourself. And first of all, say, is that a fact or an opinion? You realize it's just an opinion. And then keep pulling yourself out with replacement thoughts. So here's a good replacement thought. Haven't you already handled every single thing that life has thrown your way? And you have, and probably a lot better than you thought you would have handled it. And so once you realize that, you're in a position to say, you know what? I can handle this. I am adaptable. I am capable. So it's a matter of catching the negative thinking and rewriting it into more positive, more truthful thoughts. Nicole, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, everything that I've read, it's about the awareness, Denise, and that's what happens is the mind takes over. You get these thoughts in your mind, and then, as you said, you use the word ruminate. That's what it is. It ruminates. But if you can stop and just say, what am I doing right now? I'm worrying. Oh yeah, this is what worry feels like. And maybe it's writing it down, maybe it's switching a thought, but it's actually catching yourself. And I don't think anyone, you even said yourself, you're the worry expert, and it still even catches you. But if you have these tips and tricks to know that this is what your mind does, stop, think about it, analyze it. And as you say, think of one of these other distractions, go out, get some fresh air, put in a happier thought. One of the things I was thinking about, it's in between the L and the M, is, and this is an old one, but remember they would always say that if you make yourself smile, you actually feel better.
I believe
like
it.
Yeah, like smiling, the whole turning a frown upside down, just the act of smiling actually makes you feel a little bit better. So maybe that's another thing that that people just need to remember, is just put a smile on, and it helps alleviate some of that.
Yes, because it's a trigger for our brain. We have so many neurons firing, and when we smile, the brain just goes, oh, we do that when we're happy. Okay, I feel happy.
Yeah,
so
exactly. So one of the things I'm wondering, Denise, if you could provide for us, because what we do, as I mentioned on our dedicated COVID-19 page, is we put all these resources and different things we speak about. Can you make us a cheat sheet of CALM, what each of the letters are and what some of the strategies are? And then that would be something we could post, and then all of us, like, we could stick it on our homepage on our screen. And if we're caught in one of these things, we could go through your methodology.
Yes, absolutely. And I have a couple of things. I actually have a free ebook that people are welcome to have. It's 16 pages. It covers all of the principles that we've talked about with one strategy. And every time you think of a new strategy, you can write it down under the C, the A, the L, or the M. It has a place for worksheets as well. And so I can give that to you. People are also welcome to email me personally if they have questions at worryexpert@gmail.com. So that's easy to remember, worryexpert@gmail.com. And also for the cheat sheet, I do have a resource that you can have as well. So what this is it's a one page that you could print out. And again, this is all complimentary, and I can send that to Jamie to put up for you.
Perfect.
So people can, again, ask me directly for it. So what it is at the top of the page, after you fold it, it says, what am I worried about? So you would write that down, and then it guides you through all of the different strategies to challenge your assumptions, act to control the controllable, let go of the uncontrollable, and master your mind. So it's a really simple, and then you can just keep it with you, because sometimes we don't need to do every single step. Sometimes we realize, okay, I was just making an assumption. I feel better right now, even just knowing that, even with that awareness component. But Nicole, if it's okay with you, let's talk about opportunity, because that's really one great way to master your mind. And one of the really great questions to ask yourself in this, in order to find opportunity, is to say, wait a minute, what if this isn't happening to me? what if this pandemic isn't happening to us, but it's happening for us? So what are some of the things that we're learning? What are some of the things that even you're learning, Nicole, or that you've heard the growth and the innovation? You had mentioned that earlier, people are getting more innovative at how they do their jobs. So why don't you talk about that? If it's happening for us, what are the benefits so far?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, they always say, in times of, like the Winston Churchill is one of my favorite quotes, never waste a good crisis, and scarcity forces innovation. And I think that's what's happening to us now. So all of our field work has stopped, and we're now forced into this virtual world. But what it does is, we're all survivors, I believe, at heart. So we look at this and we say, okay, we may resist it for the first couple days or first couple hours or however long it may be. And then we say, you know what, I have to get this work done. How am I going to do it? And people are just finding so many unique ways. So municipalities is an example that would normally send us paper permits because that's the way they would always do it. So, the permit, if you make a renovation on your house, you get a permit. We get those from municipalities. Well, they still want us to process them. So they're now finding ways to send them electronically, which is what we want anyway. So that's an example of an innovation from that perspective. And then from our perspective, we're finding more and more ways to analyze data, look at virtual data, digital imagery, and still be able to do our work where we won't be able to go out and physically talk to taxpayers and business owners. So I'm seeing it every day and in every department. I'm also seeing all of our supporting departments now rally around our staff in a different way. So we would normally be focused on some external communications with municipalities. Well, we know that our call to action right now is to make sure that we support municipalities so that they can support their communities, especially with this pandemic. So now our communication staff is so internally focused on making sure that we stay engaged and supported. And this is happening every day. And we're only, as I said, we're just starting week 4. So we're just on the cusp of it. And I think it's just going to continue.
Oh, I love that. And let me share another inspiring story. So for the people who are watching, that you're inspired by what Nicole has just said. And let me inspire you with the other story I'd heard. I heard that long time ago, there was a man who was going under. He was going bankrupt. And the reason was his main source of income was selling this white goo. Have you heard this, Nicole, this story before?
No.
This guy would sell this white goo that people could use to clean the dirt off of their wallpaper from the old-fashioned heating systems. So then what happened was, when the new heating systems came in and gas came in, nobody needed this white goo anymore. And he thought, that's it, I'm sunk. So he was talking to someone else. He was talking to his sister-in-law, and his sister-in-law was a nursery school teacher. And she said, you know what? She said, my students love playing with that white goo far more than they love playing with the hard modeling clay. She said, why don't you color it and rename it Play-Doh?
Oh, no, really? That's the story of it.
It's a great story to show that sometimes we're just one small adjustment away from making things work. One small adjustment.
Yeah.
And then another story is a friend of mine, Kathleen. And when she was 50 years old, the obstacle that she was facing at that time is she was going through a divorce. So during their 25-year marriage, she had been a stay-at-home mom raising their 3 children, and she lived in California. And so she was sent to a career counselor so that the career counselor could decide how much money she was able to make to support herself. So at the career counselor, she was basically told, you know what? No, you can't make any money. You're 50 years old. You've been out of the workforce for 25 years. There's no way you're going to be able to support yourself. Well, factor opinion, ding, ding, ding. That's just an opinion. And she always had a bigger destiny in mind. She thought, you know what? I always wanted to be a pilot. So at the age of 50, she went out to get her pilot's license. And today she is a pilot. In fact, she's a federal aviation officer for the United States government. So you're never too old, never too late. And even in the storm, there are opportunities.
Yeah, where there's a will, there's a way. Carla, I'm going to ask you to come on the line and let us know if there's any questions on anything Denise and I have been talking about so far.
We do have a couple of questions. One is more suggestions on how to avoid or stop the ruminating.
Oh, more suggestions on how to avoid. Could that particular viewer, could she give me an example of what she's talking about so we can actually make it real and put it through the 4-step process?
Oh,
I'd love to be able to work with a really, like a real live example. And
a live one.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I guess you've put the question out there, so we'll see if it comes back. So in the meantime, I'll just ask another question. So how do you navigate, or how would you suggest you navigate in a household where both adults are concerned about COVID, but one has increased anxiety over it?
Yeah,
That's a
and
great
so
question, because one of the ones I was going to ask you, Denise, is so we're talking a lot about our own strategies, but what
yeah.
about other friends and family who are feeling stress and worry? Like, what are some ways we can support them?
Yeah, well, first of all, it is helpful to even use the strategies that you're learning today and say, okay, let's write this down. Let's write this down together. What are you worried about? And help guide them through the process and say, okay, so I learned about challenging your assumptions. Is this thought you're having a factor in opinion? And say, let's get the thoughts, or let's get the facts rather. Let's deal with the facts together. Help that person with the particular strategies and teach them the tools, because right now you are fully equipped with the calm process and they don't have these strategies yet. So again, write it down, work through the process with them. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Carla, did the other person come back?
If not,
Not yet.
okay,
Okay.
I can answer that question by pulling out something. I don't know if you've seen this, the daily quarantine questions.
No.
This was helpful. Okay, so there's 6 questions you can ask yourself every single day that will help you to get out of that ruminating thought. So instead of worrying about the future, bring yourself to the present, take that deep breath, and then answer these questions. Number 1, what am I grateful for today? Number 2, who am I checking in on or connecting with today? Number 3, what expectations of normal am I letting go of today? And I like how it always ends with today, because it's getting present.
Yeah.
How am I getting outside today? How am I moving my body today? And I love this last one. What beauty am I either creating, cultivating, or inviting in today? And at the beginning, Nicole, that one really helped me, because I look at this every day and I say, what beauty am I either creating, cultivating, or inviting in today? And so that's one day where I ordered flowers and they did the
Yes, you
drop.
mentioned that. They look beautiful.
And then I had the flowers the next day and I'm thinking, okay, what beauty am I creating today? And I thought, oh, I know, I'll light some candles. And then when I keep asking that, the more things that happen, the more I keep inviting in, and you can kind of start to have fun with this. And for the previous person who asked for dealing with the person with anxiety, how fun to go through this checklist with them every day, every morning. Start your day off this way or end your day this way.
I love that checklist, because you know what? To me, that's like a task list. Like a lot of us love our lists, and if that's our list, and you want to make sure you check every single one off, like how can you not feel good after doing that? And it's a reminder. Like I think number 2 is check in on someone.
Yeah.
So it forces you go through your phone, check in on someone, ask them how they're doing. Can you help them? I love that. So we're going to get a copy of that. I hadn't heard that before. We'll get a copy of that. We'll put it on the intranet, and I'm going to use that as my own personal checklist on a day-to-day basis.
Oh, great. I'll send that to you right away as soon as we wrap up.
Perfect. Carla, I saw you pop back on. Did our caller give us an example?
Yes. So they noted just having the same worries loop around, not having the control variable.
Oh, you know what? That's another part of the grieving process that we're experiencing, is that loss of control, or even a sense of control, because reality, we never actually had control. We just kind of felt more in control. So yeah, that loss of feeling in control. And again, it's really participating in the things that we're talking about today. So in that moment, challenge your assumptions. What are you worrying about? Get specific. Okay, so here, let me walk you through a real life example. My mom, and I love my mom so much. She said to me about a week or 2 ago, so we know how rapidly things are changing. She said, honey, your calm process isn't working for me right now. She said she was worried at that time. Maybe it was 3 weeks ago, actually, because of my niece, Erin, was going to school in Scotland. And they were having trouble trying to get her home. She said, I'm really worried about Erin. So I said, I know the calm process works. I know it, I know it, I know it. So I said to her, okay, Mom, what are you worried specifically about Erin not getting home? And she said, well, I'm worried that she's going to be stuck alone in a foreign country. And I said, okay, so what are you worried specifically about Erin being stuck in a foreign country? And then she named something else. And I said, what are you worried specifically about that? And then we got down to the root. I kept getting her to be specific. And then she said, I'm worried she's going to be lonely. I said, aha, now we know. I said, so we can take actions to control the controllable. You can't, if she gets stuck, we can't control that, but there are some certain actions you can take. You could Skype her, you could get on Facebook Messenger with her to try to stay connected that way. And here's another great question to ask yourself. And it's, how likely is it that I'm worried about is going to happen? So what you want to do is rate the probability of your worry happening on a scale of 1 to 10, because often we have the question wrong. Often we're saying, is it possible that what I'm worried about is going to happen? Switch it around and say, okay, is it probable? Is it very likely? And sometimes when you do that, you'll say, okay, no, it's not very likely. And rating it low on that scale of 1 to 10 can help give you some perspective. But if you rate it high on that scale of 1 to 10, or you just don't know how to rate it, that's when you go back into the calm process, take action to control what you can, and then take those actions to let go of the things you can't control.
Oh, that's excellent. And it, so many of the themes just keep coming back. It's writing it down. It's trying to not let your mind trump and take over. And I like the idea of dissecting it. Just keep asking more and more questions. What is it you're truly worried about? What is it you're truly is keeping you up at night? I think that's really powerful. Now, I want to end on a good note, so we're almost out of time. What are some things, we've talked a lot about worry. So the opposite of worry would be an elevated mood. What are some suggestions that you have for us that we can just do, on a daily basis to just elevate our mood?
Okay, here's an important one. And sometimes you talk about elevating moods and you think exercise, you think of high energy, but in this time, one of the things we really need right now is rest. And I'm talking about a rest of heart and mind. So every single day, you need to find some alone time. This does something neurologically, does something physically for you, and you need to have some space by yourself, whether it's 5 minutes, whether it's 10 minutes, whatever you can have, and just get some rest. Now, I'm not a big believer in emptying your mind. I do believe in filling it with good thoughts, though. So maybe you could focus on, in your mind, a sunny day, or if you're a person of faith, maybe you'd have your favorite Bible scripture in your mind, or maybe you just read a nice poem that you could think on. Just give yourself that breathing room to rest. This is a really good opportunity for rest right now.
I love that. And, it's funny. There's two things that come to my mind with it. One is music. I'm finding I'm really immersing myself more and more in music than I ever did before. And it's so calming and it just makes you feel so good. And then the second piece would be gratitude. So I want to thank you, Denise, for your time. It was wonderful to chat with you. I feel happier and less worried already, but I'm really looking forward to some of these tools, especially that checklist. I think that checklist is amazing. I think if we can all do that, and maybe we can even link it into the gratitude project, because what a daily recipe, I think, for all of us. So thank you. Really, really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to help all of you.